So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all depending on what time of the day you're deciding to listen to this. My name is Kelly, and this is my book called You Deserve the World 9 Life Lessons I Wish Someone Told Me Sooner. What inspired me to write this book was, well, I felt like it was definitely needed. What was happening in my life was a lot of people, young guys especially, were asking me questions about different things pertaining to girls, friends, life choices, options that they had in the future. And I feel like I was in a little bit of an advantage because I have lived, some would say, a difficult life. I've had many trials and tribulations. I've been tested beyond belief. I've been lost. I've been forgotten. I've been beaten up, used, and abused. I've been everywhere where somebody would say a fulfilled life has been lived. I have also won along with losing. And the first person I decided to invest a lot of time into, which is something that's not really appreciated too often, investing time into people. People don't really realize that, our parents invest time into us, girlfriends invest time into boyfriends, and vice versa, and same sex and all that other stuff. But the person that I decided to share a lot of my knowledge with was a young guy named Jason. Him and I worked together as garbage men, and we spent like 8 hours a day. He was 18 years old at the time, and I saw a lot of potential in this young man. So I gave him little life lessons, and out of curiosity, I actually wanted to see if it would work for someone else. The things that I'd done in my life, would it work for someone else? And truth be told, he went from a young guy, very, very shy, low confidence, low self-esteem, to the man that he is today. He's the guy who's traveled halfway across the world. He flies planes now. He's been to Asia, Europe, Australia. He's starting his own business. He's finished school. He's if he's not his mother's pride and joy, he's my pride and joy. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start off by reading. I'm going to read word for word my book, but I'm also going to add a little bit of more input, because after many of the people who read my book, they sent me so many questions, like an unreasonable amount of questions. I don't think I could invest enough time to answer each and every question, but I'm going to make an attempt to give an answer to the questions that I felt were repeated more often than the others. So here's my dedication page. Once again, this is Kelly, and my book is called You Deserve the World, and you actually do. You actually do. It's just not a catchy title that I came up with, and it's actually a mantra that I repeated to myself when I was in one of the toughest times in my life, when I had no world, when I wasn't even part of someone else's world. I would look in the mirror and say that you deserve the world. So let's get this started. Dedication. As a child, I thought one day a magic dragon, like the one from the never-ending story, would fly up to my bedroom in the middle of the night and whisk me away. Late at night, after my mother passed out from a full day's work and my father downed his last Labatt 50, I would push my dresser right up against my bedroom window, open each drawer, and using them like a set of stairs, I would climb to the top to watch the drug addicts roam the streets at night. My eyes stayed glued to their haunting silhouettes, disappearing and reappearing only in the shadows of the streetlights. You could see the difference between the addicts who were still jonesing and the ones that finally scored. The poor souls on the search for a fix moved rapidly to a dubstep rhythm, and the seemingly lucky ones grooved to a beatific John Coltrane. It was fascinating to me. In school, the teachers had a mantra that all the kids repeated at the end of school. All together, we would rise from the seats and yell at the top of our lungs, "Drugs ain't cool, drugs ain't cool, drugs ain't cool." Me being the class clown, I always tried to outdo my classmates. My goal was to have my voice echo through the hallways. That shit was funny to me. Now, my elementary school is called George Syme Public School. Well, it's a community school, and the difference between community school and public school is it's funded, where it was funded by the community. There was a lot of people who first of all, the first thing I should say is it was a different era. So now in this era, we live in the certificates, diplomas, degree era, and school doors are locked and all that other stuff. But growing up in the 80s/90s, you could volunteer and teach a class. You could teach us how to sew. You could teach us how to speak, all kinds of different things. So that's what it meant by public school. Sometimes you would see your friend's mother in there. One of the activities we used to do was carve apples, kind of like how you would carve pumpkin on Halloween. We would carve apples, and it taught us how to properly use a jackknife, which you probably would absolutely never see that in a classroom now. Anyways, continuing. I can remember the eyes of our educators darting down the rows of our classroom desks as if they were counting us in their heads, or silently betting on which one of us would fall victim to our damned community. Drugs ain't cool. It feels like in a matter of seconds I dropped into manhood. I grew, I shaved, I fought, I cursed, and I coveted. It took me many years to realize that selfishness had its time and place, and that one person is the sum of others in their life. I realized who I am today is the result of my relationships. I have struggled with alcoholism, decades of homelessness, abandonment, and depression, yet I still have so much to be grateful and thankful for. My life lessons, although brutal and unforgiving, have blessed me with resilience and vigor. I learned to dine on good relationships. I got asked, someone messaged me over Facebook and asked me what I meant by I learned to dine on good relationships. And what I meant by that is I learned that with good relationships, better things in my life came. So dine was I eat better. I eat better on good relationships. For the majority of my life, I had bad relationships with my friends, bad relationships with practically everybody. All of our relationships were intertwined by something bad, either by alcohol, violence, or gang activity. Like the relationships were bonded on bad qualities. So that's what I mean by that sentence. I learned to dine on good relationships and embrace self-assessment. Both have given me the power to be rigorously honest with myself and others. Many people, some friends, some strangers, some enemies, helped me through this bumpy journey and pointed me to my true path of salvation. The first person I owe my deepest gratitude, and the only one who picked me to win when everyone else picked me to lose, including myself, is Jessica Forrester Edwards. To you, I owe the rest of eternity and then some. So in 2012, I was going through August. I think it's August 8th. Tuesday, August 8th, 2012. It was one of the roughest days of my life. I didn't see any future in myself or future in anything I touched. To turn to shit. It was probably one of the saddest days of my life. And I called up Jessica. I don't know, up to this day, I have no idea why I called her up. I called her. Before that, I didn't speak to her for years, like maybe more than 5-6 years. I hadn't spoken to her. And I called her up, and we started off with some general conversation, and she asked me where I was. And at first I lied. I gave her the routine, like as if everything was really good in my life. And then I just broke down. I broke down and I said, I'm at a shelter. I'm very sad. I don't know where my life is going and everything else. And Jessica flew down to that shelter. I actually GPSed it. And from where she was, it would have taken her 40 minutes to get to where I was, and she was in front of me in 20 minutes. So she must have blew through every red light, must have driven on the side of the road. However she got to me, to me very quick. And from there on, she's always been like an angel in my life. Anyways, continuing. To you, I owe the rest of eternity and then some. The next person is a special one. She's half of me, and every time I see her, it completes me all over again. Satin, I love you from the bottom of my heart. You are the absolute best thing to happen to me. If you guys don't know who Satin is, that's my daughter. And that's why she's half of me. The best thing to ever happen to me, actually. And continuing, the last two gave me the strength to live my life by my own rules: Alcoholics Anonymous and capitalism. Without those two entities, you would have never heard of me. Thank you. So that was the dedication page. It's funny what writing the dedication page, I really had to assess the people, because there was, if I was to speak, if I was to tell you every single person that helped me, honestly, I could probably write a book on that, a book longer than the Bible, of every shelter staff, every stranger that popped in and out of my life that helped me along the way. One time I was trapped at Dufferin subway station, and I had no idea of how I was going to get in. Usually at that time I was homeless, I was very rebellious, and I used to just sneak into the stations. But this time it was really hard. There was like staff everywhere, and if you get caught sneaking in the station, it's like a $300 ticket if you're lucky. A lot of times they hold you until the police come and whatever else, and I didn't feel like going through that. So I just stood there feeling sorry for myself. And I guess this woman read my body language, and she gave me a token. Just like that. She didn't ask me if I needed a token. She didn't ask me where I was going, who I was, or anything. She just had a token in her hand, and she just outstretched her arm and gave it to me. And that's another person who I don't know. I probably, in all honesty, if she was to walk up to me right now, I probably wouldn't even recognize her. But she saved me, because I needed to get somewhere fast, and without her help, it wouldn't have been possible. So I'm fully aware that there's more people who needed to be in that dedication page, and in other reading material, other books that I write, other long essays that I write, I will, the dedication page will change accordingly. And here we go. Here's the introduction. The secret to life does exist. The problem is everyone is claiming to have the recipe for the witch's brew. Every philosopher, every poor soul, every critic feels that they have the key that will magically unlock your passion and power and accelerate your progress. Well, my friends, I am no different. Alakazamakazoo. My life has had its ups and downs, which I will share with you. I only share my personal stories to qualify myself as someone who knows more than the average guy. When I was younger, my aim in life was simple. I wanted to find shit and get stuck in the middle of it. And I accomplished just that. Just say the word and I would throw down with anybody. I loved fighting. I really loved fighting. My friends and I made a game called Fight You For It, which meant exactly what it says. We would fight over the last beer, pizza slice, a girl's number, even a bet. It did not matter. We were lunatics. My mind and body has been conditioned to be a badass. When I was about 11 years old, I got into my first organized fight. I say organized because it was one-on-one instead of the usual 5 against me, which had been my experience from first grade and up. Born to fight. The fight happened behind my crummy apartment building located at 200 Woolner Avenue, a place known for murders, drug dealing, and prostitution. That day it was time for me to walk through the ring of fire like so many ghetto kids had done before. I had to show the ragamuffin kids, the thugs, and the cute girls that I was no longer anyone's whipping boy. Black faces and white linen hanged over the balconies waiting for the first blow to be thrown. I was very short and scrawny with bad teeth. I had a lazy eye that the neighborhood kids, especially the girls, would tease me about. This was the main reason I was fighting. I craved their respect. I put it firmly in my mind that when I saw my opponent, I would be on his ass like white on rice, and I did just that. I attacked him with everything I had. Fists, kicks, strangleholds, cursing and spitting through the whole thing. When the fight was over, I did more damage to myself than my opponent, but I would not realize this until years later. During my craziest years, I encountered the wisest people. For a long time, I walked around living hand to mouth, deaf to the truth and blind to the obvious. Almost weekly, seasoned voices pleaded with me to change my ways and adopt a healthier lifestyle. However, as the old saying goes, the youth is wasted on the young. Things in life will follow you. Every action or word you've ever said, whether intentional or not, is right there behind you for you to acknowledge it. People spend their whole lives running from things that might have helped them in the long run, like confronting a bully, taking a risk, or giving an apology. Our bodies and minds are created to defy the odds and accept challenges. Yet, when we are faced with the opportunity to grow, we often shy away in defeat before tapping into our reservoir of natural courage. Plato says that the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself, and I believe that starts with turning around in a metaphysical sense and facing the real you. So let's begin at chapter 1, Stay Out of Trouble. Forgive Me If I Don't Shake Hands by Doc Holliday. Monster Cody was my idol growing up. He wrote a book called Monster, the autobiography of an LA gang member. It was my Bible. I wanted people to fear me, like people feared Monster Cody. I even started to introduce myself as Killer Kel. I wore blue bandanas, walked with a pimp limp. I even developed my own lingo like, shit, Nick, you see me kick that shit, almost blew that fuck. I love putting my own spin on things because it gave me a sense of control. I could have just said I kicked that shit really hard, but that wouldn't have gotten my point across. My friends mirrored my thrill for the street life, which only excited my desire to be the ultimate gangster. As young gods, we would scour the streets for rivals, salting the earth all along the way. We broke laws without consequences, so in some ways we were in charge of our own demise. Thinking back to those days, I gained a life skill that has kept me alive and safe in the most dangerous places. It's called guts, or a gut feeling. This capability is so important for a prosperous life. Unfortunately, it's missing from most people's framework. I wholeheartedly believe it's one of the secrets that separate the 1% from the rest of the world. I would not trade my guts for anything. If you have to question yourself on whether you have guts or not, then you probably do not have them. The awareness of its presence comes from using them. You have probably been protected by your parents or loved ones all your life. This allowed you to recklessly fumble through your existence without the need for guts. Because of this, you never know or realize people's true intentions until it's too late. The lack of possessing a gut feeling has resulted in catastrophic results for so many people. I recently read about a 38-year-old woman who has been arrested for her involvement in a series of internet love scams that cheated young fools out of a total of $216,000. Her goal was to seek out dumb guys, then swiftly drain their bank accounts. I assure you that she is not a rare breed. For example, a youth pastor allegedly hacked into a teenage follower's social media account and using the identity of a teenage girl, coaxed boys between the ages of 14 and 17 to share naked photos of themselves. What a pervert, eh? Even more mind-blowing was a case where a parking enforcement officer accused 3 Toronto police officers of raping her vaginally, orally, and anally. This is a situation where her guts told her that there was nothing to fear. Sadly, she was wrong, and her trust was broken and possibly lost forever. If you need more examples of the evils lurking in the dark, itching to feed on weak people, just open your local newspaper and read at your leisure. Learning how to develop and listen to your gut can be a blessing in disguise and will keep you out of harm's way if you begin to expand your awareness of it right now. It is the only surefire way I know for anyone to spot and stay out of trouble, using your guts. Now, let me add a little bit there. Well, when I speak about guts, a lot of people think guts it's commonly used as a replacement for bravery. Like that guy has guts because he jumped off a tall building or whatnot. But gut here, I mean as an intuition, that feeling you get when you feel like something's going to go wrong or you feel like something's going to go right. Now, I think, like I said here, your guts is something that gets better the more you use it. So you don't want to mistake guts for something that you've been socially conditioned to fear. That is not guts. So if I see a black guy with a hoodie on, and some people might think that's a scary sight, but that has nothing to do with guts. The shows that you've watched on TV have socially conditioned you to think that that's a scary thing. A black guy in a hoodie is as scary as a white man in a suit. You know, it all depends on the gut feeling you have inside. You know, I was talking to my friend earlier about the history of man and how we would sense things around us. That is the gut feeling. When, let's say, thousands of years ago, you wouldn't be able to spot animals in the jungle or hiding in trees because they are built to camouflage themselves in those surroundings. So you wouldn't be able to only rely on your eyesight. You also had to rely on your gut feeling. And that's what I mean here. Continuing. People who lack a connection to their gut feeling will always find themselves in a tricky position. They become afraid and drained by the hustle and bustle of life, confused by non-complex social interactions, or worse, they become a people pleaser as a defense mechanism. People pleasers often find themselves surrounded by spirit vampires. A spirit vampire will suck your energy and emotions without remorse. Spirit vampires can be an overbearing mother, a strict father, or pretentious friends. Probably with you guys, it's probably mostly pretentious friends. Those people who you know they may or may not have your best intentions in mind. And just thinking about that constantly zaps you of your energy. So do any of these sound familiar? If it does, you are already in trouble. I have had many of those life suckers in my life and now possess a keen eye for spotting them coming from a mile away. Start to recognize the people who are vampires in your life, and you will begin to feel your guts tingling, and this hopefully will hone your character. Now, that's the end of chapter 1. Now, there's a couple things I wanted to touch on in here. Character. That's a strong word. When we think about someone with character, when I say that guy has character or that woman has character, that is my compressed way of saying I think that person will be able to handle themselves in a difficult situation. Hence, they have control over their gut feeling. Now, if you want to be one of those people who possess character, one of the things what you need to do is explore the world that you're in right now without stepping out of an uncontrollable situation. And I assure you that you have enough things that are around you on your day-to-day life that you can use to gain more guts, like speaking to strangers or testing your limits when it comes to expressing yourself. People don't really realize on a day-to-day basis of how much they suppress their real thoughts. Obviously, I'm not telling you to, tell people to go F off or whatnot, but we do suppress ourselves beyond what is necessary, because it's not only to not hurt people's feelings, but in a lot of the times we're scared of a consequence what does not exist. Like approaching somebody outside of attraction. So every time you approach somebody, you don't necessarily have to approach people just because you find them hot or not. You can approach someone because you feel like, I want to talk to that person. That is not a strange feeling. We are social beings. When you see people walking around on a day-to-day basis, you should have a feeling like, I would like to talk to that person. I wonder where he got that hat or where she got those shoes. I wonder, why did they purchase that book that they're reading? There is nothing wrong with asking those questions. And who knows, you might make a new friend. Most of the people that are in my life are strangers that I've just spoken to at some sort of random time. Today, I don't know the date offhand. I think today's date is the 17th. And I have a meeting at 6 o'clock. I have to go down to the Toronto Reference Library to meet this guy who's going to help me with a project I have in the future. And do you know how I met him? He was just a random guy that I spoke to in a coffee shop about a book he was reading. And he turns out that he is probably one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. So go out and explore the world that you're already in and develop guts, because guts or your gut feeling is going to be that thing that either opens doors or closes doors in your life. It's either going to give you the power to see things, see opportunities that other people don't see, or you're going to see barriers and obstacles that are only built inside your own mind. Okay, let's move on to chapter 2. Chapter 2. Sharpen your common sense. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, Nor does food come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. Ecclesiastes 9:11. That verse, it's a Bible verse if you didn't recognize it. It's one of my favorite verses, and what it's saying is that each and every one of us, at one point in our lives, luck will shine on us. Whether we're poor, hungry, starving, smart, dumb, no matter what, at one point in your life, you will experience luck. And it's up to you to take advantage of that situation when it presents itself. So here we go. Chapter 2, sharpen your common sense. Believe it or not, this was once a world that had no kings. Tribes were led by a panel of elders, and each person made decisions based on traditions and observations of the surroundings. To sense pending dangers, children would watch their parents, and parents would watch the group, and the group together would watch out for strangers. This way of living would today be called watching out for each other. Watching out for each other does not need a whole repertoire of innate gifts. You just need common sense and a strong gut feeling. I'm about to walk you through a mental minefield, not to endanger you, but so you do not become a moronic minion, or worse yet, a slave. A topic that is widely discussed but hardly ever agreed upon is the origin of Negro slavery. I will not be discussing whether the transatlantic slave trade was right or wrong, nor its origin. I will only be sharing an interesting piece of Eric Williams' writing. He was the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, a place where both of my parents were born, and a very wise man. So the piece that I'm about to read in my book, I got a lot of messages on this, and some people took it, how would I say this? Sometimes when people are presented with the truth, a truth that they didn't know, or a truth that they made up another story about in their mind, when they're presented with it, it hurts. You know, it's kind of like when a child is told that Santa Claus doesn't exist. There's a moment where they're hurt and they have to adjust to the facts of whatever the case may be. Now, with this part, obviously with African American slavery, or Negro slavery, as Eric Williams puts it, it's a very touchy subject. This is my background. This involves a whole set of people whose entire history was wiped out. So people, when they're speaking about this situation, they tend to walk on eggshells. And in my opinion, walking on eggshells just keeps a person walking in circles without solving anything. Now, one of the biggest things, not one of the biggest things, a thing that I noticed in my childhood was on the weekends, all my friends, I'm from Toronto, Ontario. It's a very multicultural city if you're from somewhere else, right? I'm from my neighborhood. I grew up in this area called Woolner, and we had Spanish, blacks, Polish, Italians, everyone, Indian, anyone, the Chinese, anyone you could think of was all living in the buildings there. There's about 9 buildings. And on the weekends, my Chinese friends would go to Chinese school. My Portuguese friends would go to Portuguese school. My Spanish friends would go to Spanish schools, and my black friends would go to church. Now, you can see there's a big difference there. So the other people went to learn about their culture, learn about their language, and the black people, such as myself, went to church and praised Jesus, which didn't tell us much about our background. So with that being said, whenever I find, in my experience, whenever the topic of black history comes up, or black slavery comes up, it's very, very, it's something that's often approached delicate and never dove in deeply. It's just very surface level. Like, you'll hear something like, white people put black people in slavery, and then they will just go that. It will just stop right there. But this passage that Eric Williams speaks about, I think it's in an entire book, you can with this one paragraph here, you can, I honestly, you could probably teach a whole university program just based on this one paragraph. So to the people who sent me messages about the way I used it in the book, you know, I unfortunately, I'm not going to apologize because it's necessary, and it's just a fact of life that there were characteristics that were seen and used, just like in real life. People will see your weaknesses and use you. This is an actual thing that will happen in life. No one's going to look at the weaknesses that you display on a daily basis and feel sorry for you. If you are a docile person, or you're a person who doesn't use their common sense, or naive or easily manipulated, these bad things are going to happen to you. And the thing is about bad things happening to you, most of the time you don't even know it. You think it's a good deal. Like, you do not know that you're in a bad deal until, you know, someone else tells you that's horrible. Like, I remember in the early, during the financial crisis, I think in 2008, when they started offering people the second mortgages on their houses, and they disguised it by calling it prime. I think it was called prime sublets. And people all over thought it was a great idea. I could take a second mortgage on my house and, you know, pay off bills or whatever, what have you. But the people who weren't naive, or the people who were just wiser than the others, realized that that was just a horrible, horrible deal, and it's going to put you in an immense amount of debt. And I think Michael Moore did a whole documentary of people watching people get their house snatched up for being naive. So being naive, docile, not using your common sense is a real serious thing. So let's continue. In his book, Capitalism and Slavery, he wrote that the origin of Negro slavery was economic, not racial. It had to do not with the color of the laborer and the cheapness of the labor, as compared with Indian and white labor. Negro slavery was immensely superior because the Negro was strong, docile, and had superior endurance. It is interesting that these characteristics were the ones to attract slave owners, because they are the same characteristics that they must have had themselves, well, minus the docile part. One of my favorite philosophers, John Stuart Mill, spoke of the dangers of being docile. He asserts that a state which dwarfs its men, in order that they may be more docile instruments in its hands, even for beneficial purposes, will find that with small men, no great thing can really be accomplished. I just want to repeat that last part there. With John Stuart Mill, what he says is a state which dwarfs its men. So what minimizes a man, either mentally, intelligently, or emotionally, in order that they may be more docile instruments, meaning that they do what they're told without question, whether it's rather right or wrong. So they may be more docile instruments in hands, even for beneficial purposes. We'll find that with small men, no great thing can really be accomplished. So just to sum it up, he's saying with docile people, no greatness will ever come from them, because they're stuck in a childlike mentality. And I'm sure you've seen people in their own lives, in your own life, who are stuck in that child mentality. A lot of the times, because we're growing up with our parents, and our parents are basically the first people we're introduced to. So to understand the world, we analyze our parents, we break them down in our minds. And as we grow older, we start to realize that in some aspects, they're stuck in a childlike mentality. They found safety and just stayed there. You know? And not just our parents. I'm not picking on our parents, because obviously there's a difference in knowledge. There's a difference between the knowledge between you and a couple generations behind. But I'm speaking more of ambition. Sometimes our ambition is trapped in a childlike mentality. And that's really, really unfortunate. A lot of times that when I speak to people, that's one of the first things that I notice about them, that they're stuck in this childlike mentality where they need to, really need to step into adulthood, or find themselves, stuck in a position that they don't want to be in. So let's continue here. Common sense is a uniquely difficult subject because people believe that everyone has or should have common sense, even in a minimal amount. However, in my experience, I have met countless people who do not have a single droplet of common sense. Scotsman Thomas Reid states that common sense has identifiable traits and is necessary to all men for their being and preservation. He's right. In 2008, more than 1 in 100 adults in the United States were in prison, and those numbers have kept increasing. Smart Money says that many of those unlucky men and women sitting in their concrete cells are there because of a strong lack of common sense. These people probably fell victim to their own reckless stupidity and their inherent need to trust people. And through the no fault of their own, over time, they have been conditioned to believe, listen, and thereby placed into the hands of our planet's predators. So with that, I just want to comment on that last bit there, where I say they have been conditioned to believe, listen, and thereby placed into the hands of our planet's predators. See, as a child, when we're excited that we're alive, right? So we're touching things, we're yelling, we're screaming, we're doing whatever we want, basically. And then our mothers or our fathers would tell us to shh, be quiet. So from there, you'll start to learn that to listen to other people. Then moving on from there, you're placed into class or into a classroom, and then you realize that you can't just speak whenever you want. You raise your hand to speak, and this conditions you to believe and listen to everybody else around you except for yourself. And you start to develop this you start to develop a piece of yourself that is constantly asking for permission. Which is, it's good in some ways when you're asking permission to, how would you say it? When you're asking permission to cross into to grow in life. So I'm getting too metaphysical, but when you're asking, actually, I'll just touch on that later. So with the part that I'm saying there, where they had been conditioned to believe, listen, and thereby placed into the hands of our predators, this is something that we can't really avoid, but we have to use our common sense to realize that this actually exists, that I may be, and I'm speaking about myself, I may be listening to someone who's tricking me instead of teaching me. There's a very, very thin line between being tricked and being taught. And that line is extremely blurry. It's like the line of love and lust. It's very, very blurry. And you have to be able to develop your common sense so you understand that someone's either teaching you or they're tricking you. So let's continue here. The majority of the prison population, along with the rest of society who are missing common sense, are doing three things wrong. First, they carelessly invited insanity into their hearts. Second, they confirmed their trust with the same person who's deceiving them. And thirdly, they lacked common sense. I should define common sense before we go any further. Common sense is an acquired sharpness that evaluates social situations for subtle consequences. So small that you can't even see it. But I almost can guarantee you that you're going to feel the consequence. It's conceivable to believe that common sense is our fifth sense. When I stress the importance of having common sense, I do so in the most serious way possible. This is why, just pause for a second, this is why I'm adding so much more to this chapter, because the thing about common sense, it's not as simple as, filling up a cup of water or per se. Common sense is something that it's one of my friends say it's kind of like magic. You really don't even know if it exists or not. The only way you know it exists is by using it. So it's for you guys listening, and obviously I love you guys for listening. Really give yourself sit down and have yourself a self-talk about common sense, and really try to understand whether you have it, whether you've been using it. Point out situations in your life where you used it for the good or used it for the bad, and try to have it involved in your day-to-day decisions. Because our day-to-day decisions is what gives us, the big prize at the end. It's small steps bring you to greatness. Greatness is not just one giant leap and you just get it. Greatness is small steps done correctly. To do those small steps correctly, you need common sense. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When I stress the importance of having common sense, I do so in the most serious way possible. Many people believe that the 1% has gained their upper hand by manipulating a factor that was only obtainable by their privilege. However, I would argue that their advantage lies in the accuracy of how well they use their common sense to accentuate their objectives to themselves and others. Inviting insanity. Inviting insanity into our hearts is arguably our biggest defect as human beings. We long to fall in love with a special someone. We pray for money to relieve our financial stress. And of course, we lust after whomever, hoping for reciprocation. To believe that someday you may enjoy these things is to invite insanity into your heart. So there's nothing wrong with inviting insanity. You have to. In order for you to believe that there's something bigger for you out in the world, you have to embrace that insane part of your mind. So if you don't know, in my life, I was homeless for about 15 years and I really gave up on life. I didn't plan on actually doing anything. I was pretty content of living day to day and enjoying the small little desire, embracing my desires and the small little things that I thought were luxuries at the time. And it would have been insane, absolutely insane for me to think that I would go from Seton House to York University. Now, with other people, that's just an illogical step in their life. They just, after high school, they go to college or they go to university. For me, going to university was equivalent to, I don't know, standing on my tippy toes and touching Venus. It was just something that would absolutely never happen. But for me to make these things possible, I had to invite insanity into my heart and into my mind. Remember, being in a shelter and doing what I needed to be done to get into school, I had like 98% of the guys staying there telling me that it's not going to happen, that it's a young man's game, and I'm not smart enough to sit in the classroom or answer questions, or they would fill me up with so much doubt it's unreal. They would they can actually write a book of excuses of why I shouldn't have. But it's just the me inviting insanity into my mind that kept me moving forward. So I'm saying that inviting insanity is an actual good thing, but you need to use your common sense to regulate it. Okay, let's go. You can find so many people around you who have taken the plunge into an adventure only to end up broke or heartbroken or both. There is nothing wrong with this. However, there is something definitely wrong if you were the instrument instead of the engineer of the plan. I have had my fair share of relationships, and yes, I've been in love and fell into depression. But guess what? I signed up for it, and I have no regrets. I knew that love might not work out, and when I moved away with her, I knew that I might lose it all, and I was fine with it. So with that situation there, I was speaking about, there's two women I moved away with in my life. I moved away once to Edmonton and another time I moved to Ottawa. And obviously both relationships didn't work out, but it was okay because I knew that was something I sacrificed at that time because I was in love. I was the engineer of my plan and not an instrument. No one was using me. And that's what you want to stay away from. You don't want to be an instrument in your own downfall. You don't want to look back at your life and think to yourself that the reason why everything fell apart is because you were too stupid to see differently. Like, I used to work in this old folks home, and it was probably one of the best jobs, not advancement wise, but for pay, because you could lift up a lamp, walk across a room and just put it on another table and get paid $200. That's the whole moving company. That's all they did was just move furniture in old folks' homes because a lot of people are old and they can't really do it for themselves. And inside that home, I got so much information about life because these elderly people, these seniors, didn't have too many people to speak to. So whenever us young guys would come in, they would just unload life information. And the things I learned were exactly what I'm speaking about now. Using your common sense, using your head, using your guts and your gut feeling. Guts as in courage, gut feeling as in common sense. Have a lot of sex, safe sex, obviously. If you see something you want, go for it. There's no one out there better than you. This is you deserve the world. I have my own T-shirts would say you deserve the world. I got that from seniors. They used to one guy. That's how he used to finish the conversation. I would walk away and he says, "Kelly, always remember you deserve the world." And that's half the reason why. Well, not even half. Probably 80% of the reason I wrote this book, because I was really tired of young people, boys and girls, just full of so much self-doubt and misdirection, and they have all these people around them telling them like really idiotic shit, like, believe in yourself and have some passion, and just send someone out into the, send them out into the world with just believe in yourself and have some passion. Well, like what the hell is someone going to really do with that? They have to know the pieces of life that you're going to use, because, in some ways a life is like a Rubik's Cube. You're constantly turning and twisting and turning and twisting and trying to get this perfect pattern, right? And in order for you to keep going, it's not belief in passion or anything like that. It's common sense. It's discipline. Discipline is drive. Those are things that are going to move you forward. Inviting insanity and monitoring insanity. Don't, you're going to invite insanity without going insane. Elon Musk is a great guy. When I think a great example of inviting insanity. For the longest time, I thought this guy was like part of NASA or something. He's just a man who's really embraced inviting insanity, and the world loves him for it because he monitors it, and there's a method to his madness. Okay, let's continue here. I've had my fair share of relationships, and yes, I've been in love and fell into depression. But guess what? I signed up for it, and I have no regrets. I knew that love might not work out, and when I moved away with her, I knew that I might lose it all, and I was fine with it. But to those of you who were used mentally and abused emotionally, it's a different story. I remember one of my previous supervisors sharing a story with me about her former lover who refused to be seen with her in public because she was overweight. She did not know that he had a problem with her weight until he blew up one day and embarrassed her at a party in front of all her friends. She vowed she would never date again. Obviously, I felt bad for her, but I knew that it was partly her fault, since there must have been signs that she chose to ignore because the fairy tale of finding love felt too good. That last piece there is another part that I got a lot of messages from people saying that, how do I know that there were signs? How do I know that there were signs that she ignored? Well, this is how I know. Life is constantly throwing signs at you. I can lie with you through my words, but it's very hard for me to lie through my body. This is why the CIA or the FBI or any kind of intelligence, when they're questioning terrorists or bad people or criminals, they don't give two rats poops about what you're saying. They're watching your body, because your body is constantly giving off signs. Right? So that is how I know that there must have been signs that she ignored. But unfortunately, she was blinded by love. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've been blinded by love. I'm sure you've been blinded by love. Love feels good. Love feels so good that you don't want anything else to get in the way. So anything that distracts you from love, you do away with it, right? And it's part of being human. Beware of trust. Trust is tricky. Even I haven't gotten a true grip on who I should trust. Trust is built into our everyday affairs. It flows through our minds, and some cultures have attached symbols like money and gestures like a handshake or a wink of an eye to reaffirm our trust. Trust is all in a person's attitude and poise. Unfortunately, in most cases, that's all we can trust. That is why we often get duped by trusting the wrong person. Trust has a natural power that can manifest itself into a whole world of activities like relationships, respect, sex, and bonding for good intentions or bad ones. Whole societies are built from scratch using trust as the blueprint. We search for trust because we want stability. If we were not going to presume someone to be innocent, we would walk around all day in a self-induced panic. Even the American criminal justice system holds that a defendant is innocent until proven guilty, even if the suspect is found at the crime scene soaked in blood. It's our way of giving someone a fair shot. I wish I had a secret that could help you and I separate the trustworthy from the dishonest, but I don't. The only thing I could recommend is sharpening your common sense, which leads us to, you guessed it, common sense. Common sense is like your great gazoo. If you don't know who the great gazoo is, that's the little green Martian from Fred from the Flintstones, where he would give Fred advice, and it all depends on how Fred would use it, if it was good or bad, and that's why I call it common sense, because the great gazoo thought that he was brilliant, but the information he was giving it to, which was Fred, was not a brilliant man. So common sense is like your great gazoo. It can cause problems or create solutions depending on how well you use it. In my own life, my common sense has been resourceful. Robert G. Ingersoll famously said, "It is 1,000 times better to have common sense without education than to have education without common sense." I believe in my heart of hearts that my common sense is what separates me from the pack. Growing up at Jane and Woolner, a place where murder, mayhem, and destruction does not discriminate, I needed to enhance my common sense by watching, listening, and thinking. 3 qualities that, by my account, is missing from most people's lives. The combination of all 3 is what you want to successfully utilize in order to analyze your surroundings and sharpen your common sense. If you feel that you're missing your common sense, don't be embarrassed, since it may have been stolen from you by people who are overprotecting you and sheltering you from life's realities. Common sense is as essential as the ability to speak or touch, and you will have a hard time maneuvering through life without it. I encourage you to roam the world around you before traveling outside your limits and begin to analyze the elements surrounding you using the 3 qualities. Take note that falling back into inviting insanity into your life and trusting deceivers will always deteriorate your common sense. Chapter 3. Tell the truth. Integrity is telling myself the truth, and honesty is telling the truth to other people. Spencer Johnson. Have you heard of Woolner? Most likely not. They were a notorious Asian gang in the 90s. My buddy Diamond had made a deal with the devil, and I, being the great friend that I am, felt that I needed to save him. Sadly, Diamond would prove in the future that he was my enemy. Diamond had taken a large sum of an unspecified product on consignment from an alleged member of the Woolner, and quite frankly, he fucked everything up. To make a long story short, we could not come up with the $10,000 needed to rectify the situation, and wound up explaining the truth about the money while staring at a Glock 21. Not fun. Thinking back to that time in my life, I think that time in my life I didn't really care about the outcome of things. And that goes back to lesson 1, which staying out of trouble, which I had a extremely hard time staying out of trouble. And one of the ways of staying out of trouble is helping friends. So 2 things I did wrong there. I didn't spot a fake friend, and I got involved in a situation that could have ended my life there was no benefit for me other than to display loyalty to a fake friend. So I hope you guys picked up on that. Have you ever heard that the truth shall set you free? Well, it did on this occasion. Truth has the power to change even the direst dynamics. There's something about telling the truth that commands respect. Deep down in our souls, we feel better about ourselves when we get something off our chest. There was a rapper named G. Depp in the 90s who had a successful music career under the world-famous music mogul Puff Daddy. He had the girls, money, popularity, the things that the wildest part of our imagination wishes for. But that didn't stop him from walking into a police station to turn himself in over an almost 20-year-old murder charge. Telling the truth brings you peace of mind and gives you the authority to accept your destiny. Being true to yourself and your beliefs allows you to live with integrity and virtue. Always tell the truth, especially to yourself. Truth is power. Now, I think this is the shortest chapter in the book, but it should be on the top of your list, telling the truth. Now, there's something that adds to the person who you are when it comes to telling the truth. Because when you lie, there's something that happens inside of you. It doesn't, even if you're a professional liar, there's a little piece of you that's taken. And I'll speak for myself. I'm not sure what it is for you guys, but for me, a little piece of my manhood gets taken. That's pretty much the biggest reason why I don't lie. It makes me feel less of a man, and it makes me feel fearful of things that I shouldn't be scared of. You know, obviously, if I'm threatened with a beheading or something, I think I'm going to lie to keep my head attached. But let's face it, I'm not faced with those kind of things on a daily basis. So I don't really see a reason why I would lie to somebody. And if I do lie, it's the feeling that sits with me, not for just that moment, but that feeling that sits with me for forever. For every time I see that person, I think to myself, I lied to that person about whatever. Every time I see them, it just brings back that feeling of feeling less than a man. So embrace truth. Be a truthful person, and it does something. When people are around you and they know that you're a truth teller, it makes them respect you. It gives you, and I know respect is a word that's thrown around like it means nothing, but when someone honestly respects you, it means so much. It means so much to you, your relationship with them, and it's a growth point in life. Chapter 4, lose big over losing nothing. If you hang around with losers, you become a loser. President Donald J. Trump. After this book, I could almost surely write a series of books about losing. Believe you me, I am an expert at losing. The first half of my life, I have demonstrated to myself and illustrated to onlookers the ins and outs of losing big. Losing is a disagreeable part of life that even the best of us must face at one time or another. The first thing I ever lost was my skateboard. When I was in grade 7, a couple of neighborhood tough boys stole my skateboard right from under my nose. Scared of their large numbers, I ran back home to my father, who responded to my neglect with a sound beating. Angry at both my stolen skateboard and the brutal beating received by my father, I returned to the park. I approached a boy who looked like the leader. His name was Tommy. The bastard was standing on my board, rocking back and forth. Before Tommy could say a word, I kicked the skateboard out from under his feet and stomped on his head for about a half a minute, although it felt like hours. His friend stood stiff in mere shock of the violence a little boy such as myself could harness. When it was all over, I picked up my skateboard and learned my first lesson about losing, and that is a person will discover how far they are willing to go in life after a failure or losing something. I stay true to that. I think it's the realest sentence I wrote in this book, that a person will find out how far they're willing to go once they lose something. So when you lose something, I don't care how small it is. You lose a lover, or you lose, like I said here, I lose my skateboard. There's two things you could do. You could accept the loss, right, and then expect to lose more things, or you stand up and you get back what you lost. It's like a coming of age moment, and the thing about life, you're not going to just lose one thing. People are going to attempt to take things from you. You're going to lose things either intentionally or unintentionally. Losing is part of life, but you have to be sure of what your reaction is going to be when you lose something, because it is a growth moment. Like I said, it's probably the realest sentence I wrote in this whole thing. For some of you, reading that childhood story, there might be more lessons than the above-mentioned one. However, for now, that will be the only one. When a person loses something in their life, especially something that they claimed either mentally or physically, they are faced with a couple different obvious choices. First, they can accept the loss without retribution. That would be defined as a pathetic loser in my book. Second, they can hold on tight to their possession, committing themselves to lose right along with their thing with their things, such as a robbery. So that's like someone's trying to steal your I don't know, your hat, and you hold on to it, and you guys are tug of warring, playing a game of tug of war with it, and you're deciding that if I lose I'm going to lose my life along with that hat. That's not always smart. Third, and this is the one I recommend, is to only allow a loss if you are going to gain something much greater in the end. So what I'm saying there, do not lose anything unless you're going to gain something bigger in the end. Chapter 5, read diligently. Reading is not exhausted merely by decoding the written word or written language, but rather anticipated by and extending the knowledge of the world. Paulo Freire. My habit of reading is the driving force for the change in my life. I could write a large portion of this chapter about the importance of reading. I could talk about how it's necessary to change anything from better to worse or vice versa. Instead, I will put a must-read list for you because like Frederick Douglass says, once you learn to read, you will be forever free. Whenever I share my story about my life, I had a rough childhood, homelessness, and everything else. People always ask me, what helped you? How did you get out of that position? As if I have some sort of, I know what they're expecting. They're expecting some step 1 to 5 method of how to defeat the odds kind of thing. Like I said earlier, they expect me to say something like, step 1, believe in yourself. Step 2, never give up. Step 3, always have passion. Step 4, that kind of nonsense. But taking my situation, for instance, I didn't really have nothing other than my ability to read. I had no money, I had no home, no friends, no family who were willing to help. Nothing at all. No person in a powerful position, no anything, no connection, no nothing. All I had was the ability to read. So I used to spend my time in the public libraries just teaching myself things that I wish I knew. So I taught myself how to play chess. I taught myself how to save money properly. I taught myself many different things. And I think that's, if I didn't mention here, it's a large portion of my success in life is reading. And I think it flies over a lot of people's heads. People are more interested in being told condensed information, kind of like a BuzzFeed kind of thing. Getting, they'll pick up some sort of multi-millionaire book and watch a video on fight mediocrity and get like a 2-3 minute digestible video about the book. And I think that really robs yourself of what it really means to read and embrace knowledge, because what I get from a book is far different from what you can get from a book. So sure, I could tell you, about a great book or whatnot, but you could read that book and find even more things than I mentioned. So here I write out 10 books that I think every person should read. And this list honestly changes day to day. So on the day that I wrote this book, I felt like these are the books that I always recommend to anybody who I work with. So the first one is Personal Finance for Dummies by Eric Tyson. Now, one of the most interesting things for us as human beings is that I don't want to say no one, very few people handle money correctly, and it's, I think I read somewhere that, the average family is like 2 to 3 paychecks away from poverty or being booted out their house or whatnot. And I think it's because of, the lack of knowledge when it comes to personal finance. We save for things instead of saving to invest money. We save to purchase like a pair of shoes or a car or something instead of saving to invest money. One of the fundamental elements about money is all about delaying self-gratification. That is like one of the biggest things about money. When we read about, the stories of rich people or whatnot, it's like the piece that's always there. They could be computer geniuses, television personalities, whatever small business to big business, investors, whatever it is, there is a part in their life where they held off their desires with the future in mind. So Personal Finance for Dummies by Eric Tyson, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a must read. Think and Grow Rich is, if you haven't read that, that should be the next book that you listen to or you read. It's free online. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Next book is Persuasion by Arlene Dickinson. It's a book. You know what? I read this book a couple years back, and now I'm starting to see it in bookstores. They're putting it in the front. I don't know what happened. Maybe something happened in media. Maybe someone important mentioned her book, and now all of a sudden everyone realizes that it exists. But I read it a couple years ago, and it's brilliantly written, and it's Arlene has a different way of seeing things. If you did watch her show when she was with Kevin and I don't know what the other guys' names, they're all on the Dragon's Den. There was something about Arlene that attracted the audience. A lot of people were drawn to Arlene, and she has a very unique way of analyzing a person along with analyzing the product. Where others were just seeing the product and seeing the profit. Arlene had almost like a long-term view of what she was seeing. Does the person match the product, and how far, would these people go? The next book is Wake the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. I saw Tony Robbins in September 2015, and it's probably one of the greatest days of my life. For the longest time, I thought he was a big fraud. I thought he was just like a snake oil salesman, but until I went to go see him, it definitely changed my life for the better. The other book is Made in America by Sam Walton. Sam Walton's the one who invented Walmart. He came up with Walmart. He's another person who, is saved up, delayed temporary satisfaction for future gains. Reading about his stories, reading how he developed Walmart, how he would travel in different stores and measure aisles and, do research and how someone reaches for a product. Like the thought that went into Walmart is just, it's unexplainable. If you're an entrepreneur, and I don't believe we're all entrepreneurs, I think that everyone can own a business, but I do not believe that everyone's an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur takes a special breed, a special type of person, a person who's doing it not for money, but doing it because they just need to do it, kind of like an artist needs to paint or a singer needs to sing. An entrepreneur needs to make business, whether, without thinking I'm going to make $1 billion in a year or something like that. They just do it because they do it. The next book, and you know what? Whenever I speak about books, it's always shocking to me that I don't hear people bring up Helen Keller. And she was blind, deaf, and also mute. And she has this book called The Story of My Life. And if you want to read about obstacles and a different perspective of life and overcoming, actually, the true meaning of courage, her book should be on your book list. It's called The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. The next one is Benjamin Franklin. And what I wrote here is any book that is written by Benjamin Franklin, absolutely any book written by Benjamin Franklin you should read. If you can, read multiple books by Benjamin Franklin. The one reason I will give you is that he's on the money and he's not a president. So if you can get on money and if you're not a prime minister or a president, then you must be somebody important. There has to be something about this man that he's on the money and he was never a president. Next book is Cosmos by Carl Sagan. I think it's a question that most people ask themselves of where we are, what's surrounding us, how did we get here? And although he doesn't answer that question, and I don't think anybody could answer that question, it opens your mind to kind of package your question properly so you could be sent on your journey, when you're on your journey trying to discover where we are or what we're doing here, your questions actually make sense. And that's what I feel what Cosmos did that for me. It put a lot of things in perspective and made me realize how small I truly am. Sometimes we get trapped in our own heads and we think that we're this larger than life type of being, but really we're just so insignificant. We're like a speck of dust on a beach. We're like, I don't want to sound too depressing or whatnot, but we really don't matter. We matter to ourselves, and that's what Cosmos means. Well, that's what I got from Cosmos. The next book is The Black Book of Communism by multiple authors. I don't want to butcher their names. I don't want to butcher their names. So you could Google The Black Book of Communism and find out how the different ideas that this world tried to live in. Sometimes we think that, nothing's been tried. It's our own ignorance. We think that we know a better way, not thinking to ourselves that better ways have been tried. We didn't just wake up and live the way that we live now. It was horrible for a very long time, and the world is bigger than North America. Read about how, the barter system worked, or the traditional way of life where you would do what your father did, your mother would do what your mother did, and or you would do what your mother did, or communism or socialism or fascism. All these different ways of life. These ways have been tried. Female deities or deities have all these things have been tried. And it's good to start with the Black Book of Communism, but also read about different ways of how we used to live in the past. So just to give you a perspective of, it's been tried, and get off it. And the final one is your own life story. I think everyone should write a book about their life, if not for themselves, for someone in the future. I got a lot from reading people's biographies. A lot of people I read about. Like last night, I was reading about Condoleezza Rice. She's a former Secretary of State under George W. Bush. And the funny thing about, or the interesting thing about Condoleezza Rice is that she doesn't get spoken about a lot, or either she does, and I'm just not, my intention's not in that direction. But this is a young black woman from like the poorest part of the United States. I believe she's from Alabama. She ends up being a Secretary of State. Her family are former slaves. She speaks Russian. She was a Russian ambassador. She accomplished so much in her life. She's she plays multiple instruments. She's good at it. She won awards and whatever else. Like this woman is the embodiment of what people should strive to be, but yet no one really speaks about her. And I think people don't speak about her because she doesn't follow under the black definition of a person. Like she doesn't, I don't know. She just doesn't fall under that black, way of living, I guess. It's really hard to find that word, and I find the words to explain what I'm trying to say here. But anyways, Condoleezza Rice is an amazing woman, and she's one of the people that I look up to and I find strength from. Chapter 6. No easy way in. Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. I have never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I have envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well. Theodore Roosevelt. My first lessons in life were not easy ones. At age 6, I learned to keep secrets. At age 10, I learned no one keeps secrets. You have been alive long enough to know that life is quick and can be brutal for the intelligent and the ignorant. Think about it. Just the other day, you were a kid whose only goal was to make it out the front door and travel on your own. Now you have responsibilities that need your due diligence to be completed or else face the consequences. Inside your mind and heart, you may have balled up emotions of questions and concerns about your past, present, and future. And now you are realizing that these issues need handling before it gets out of control. And you spend your adulthood sobbing on a therapist's chair. Growing up in a complete disaster of neglect and vulnerability, I noticed patterns which are very common for a child living in distress. I'm pretty confident that you also witness patterns in your own life and have determined with some accuracy that some values will guide you to a life of glory and opportunity, and other habits will generate misfortune and hard times. I was 16 and homeless, staying at the Covenant House Youth Shelter. Back in those days, all of us would meet up every morning at Allen Gardens, a very popular park in Toronto. We would count up all our money or stolen valuables to see if we could buy alcohol or drugs to take the ease off the stress to come later, which was guaranteed. No matter which rock you crawled out from under or which walk of life you came from, you would learn very quickly that this is what sharp street kids did in the mornings. It was a survival pattern for those who wanted to enjoy a little more luxury than the others. There is an amazing woman who I have placed in my mastermind group. A mastermind group is from the book Think and Grow Rich. A mastermind group consists of people from past or present or whoever you want. You need not have known these people personally. You just adopt them into your mastermind group, and these are just people who you ask questions in your mind. So, especially in this age where it's kind of like everyone's like an open book, you can kind of guess how someone would think things through. So with me having Daphne in my mastermind group, I sometimes when I think about certain things, I ask myself how she would tackle my problems. Or another person in my mastermind group is Martha Stewart, Floyd Mayweather, 50 Cent, Donald J. Trump. There's so many. Steve Biko, off the top of my head. There's a Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Elaine Brown. She was the leader of the Black Panther Party. These are people that sometimes when I'm faced with some sort of difficult position, I think to myself, okay, well, how would these people handle it? And then I move on from there. So there is an amazing woman who I have placed in my mastermind group, though I have never met her. Her name is Daphne Kohler. As a young woman, she received a bachelor's degree from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem at the age of 17 and a master's degree at the age of 18. If you're not completely floored by that accomplishment, then you really need to give your head a shake. She went on to complete her PhD and authored over 200 peer-reviewed publications. Like, that is crazy. Later on, she launched Coursera, the online course website, and she's still breaking down barriers and creating a world of magnificent things. For Dr. Kohler, she recognized that education would be her way to open doors and express herself. And she was right. The pattern she embraced was to turn her love for knowledge to a concrete belief, which so happens to be the title of her thesis. Becoming more than you are in life takes diligence and practice, and yes, a little bit of luck. The people who sacrifice for the future almost always turn out to be more fortunate than the ones who show a lack of discipline. Socrates says that one must have care or diligence for doing fine and good deeds. This includes crafting yourself into a masterpiece of resourcefulness. Chapter 7. Promise yourself the moon. Envy is ignorance. Imitation is suicide. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ralph Waldo Emerson also has an essay called Self-Reliance. I encourage you to read it. Read it and use it as a compass in life. It will not lead you astray. If you haven't figured this out by now, you should embrace the philosophers of the past, the theorists of the past, the thinkers of the past, and because this is my own personal opinion, I feel like these are the men and women who took a little more time to unload their mind and put it into a digestible way where we can absorb it into our lives and actually use it instead of the crap that we get today, where it's, how to make $1 million in 30 days or stuff like that. Because if you've taken a look at the world around you, in my opinion, money is probably the easiest thing you could get. If there's so many different ways that you can just acquire money. You just need a little discipline, and it will come into your life. But to really discover who you are, not why you're here, but just who you are. And who you are is, even though the question sounds simple, it's quite large, because who you are, like I said in the beginning of the book, is the sum of everyone who you've met. So discovering who you are, it's changeable. Who you are today is not who you are tomorrow. Who you are next year is not going to be the person who you are today. So constantly putting yourself on that journey and discovering who you are, and are you becoming the person you want to be, is quite a difficult journey, but worth it. Let's go. Have you ever broken a promise to yourself? Maybe you swore you would never call someone back, or you promised to stick to a diet, or worse yet, you returned to an abusive lover. I believe all of us at some time in our lives have broken a promise. We make promises to ourselves to solidify an action and to show our undying commitment. I know, and you know, that when we make a promise at the time, we believe with all sincerity that the mission will be completed. However, things happen. The same goes for promises that we make to ourselves. We do it because we finally had enough of one thing or another and need to set forth this new series of actions, and then something happens. Making a promise to yourself can feel rewarding until something happens and you fail. However, don't beat yourself up about it, since failing is a must in your journey. The problem with failing is, of course, the crushing feeling of defeat, but more importantly, very few of us have a safety net to catch us when we do fall. Even though failure is a necessity of life, we are seldom prepared for it. Therefore, we fear it. I say failure is a necessity in life because it helps us grow and learn from the past. And without growth, we often find ourselves stuck like a hamster on a spinning wheel. As children, we try to hide our flaws instead of correcting them. Some of us make attempts to compensate for them, and we drag this behavior into adulthood. Preparing and recovering from failure can be done using only one tool, and that is the power of unshakable confidence. Philosopher Spinoza beautifully states that confidence happens when hope conquers fear. I love that saying. I absolutely love it. Confidence originates from two beginnings, either from an opinion or an attitude. However, the opinion or the attitude can be evinced by you or the crowd. And that there is where the secret of confidence lies. I really hope that you're taking in that last sentence. I'm actually going to repeat it. The opinion or attitude can be evinced by you or the crowd, and that there is where the secret of confidence lies. So constantly, there's countless amount of books speaking about the importance of confidence and where it comes from and where you can magically get it from. And I believe that the secret of confidence is who knows who controls it. Your confidence can come from within or outside, and that's where acquiring confidence can become very difficult. I am sure there are plenty of people out there in the world who think that faking it till they make it is a great idea. Yet their effort in faking it has done nothing for them other than create an emptiness in their soul. Countless stories of celebrities falling victim to their own insecurities proves this much. With my life experience, I could say that working with my own insecurities and past my feelings of inferiority has done a lot for my mental and emotional development. On Tuesday, August 7th, 2012, my whole world fell apart. I found myself wandering down Dundas Street drunker than a boiled owl. I was fired from my job, homeless, friendless, and drunk with absolutely nowhere to go. A martial artist named Neil Marley gave me a ride to the Wilkinson Road shelter and wished me luck. At that time, I felt lower than pond scum. My goals consisted of finding my next drink and wallowing in self-pity and guilt. It took almost 6 months for me to muster up the inner strength to even look at my own face in the mirror. But when I did, I made my first promise, and I invite you to do the same. Go right now. And I want you to do this. Right as soon as I finish this chapter, I want you to do exactly what I say here. Go right now, look into the mirror, find your own eyes, and make the first promise to yourself that you'll never break. Aim to be great. Chapter 8. Learn how to kiss. We have a distorted view of our fantasies because we don't talk about them enough. Isn't that true? Sasha Grey. Her name is not important to me now, but when it was, I would whisper it under my breath just to relive the warm tingle that would shoot from my heart to my head and back. I was 15 years old and had a job as a beer and cigarette boy at illegal card games. The games were held at secret houses in order to ward off would-be robbers. The locations were handed out on matchbooks to the players and whores. It was Friday night, and I was sent for by a couple high rollers. There were plenty of young hoodlums dying to be trapped in a smoke-filled room with these fellas. However, it was me they wanted. In one night, I could walk away with $400, not included the single cigarettes I could sell the next day. I knew each man's brand of cigarettes and strong drink, and most of all, I knew that silence was crucial when a man played cards. That night, I snuck my girlfriend into a gambling house. She wasn't new to illegal activities or seeing stone-cold killers. She was smart, and I had a reputation for finding her own ways of rounding up cash around the neighborhood. We crept quietly upstairs, even though it was impossible to hear us over the reggae music and loud sex noises. I made her promise that she would be quiet while I attended the tables. We hooked pinkies, and I made a deal with her that I wouldn't be too long between games. I have tried many times to dig up the dirty details of that night, and to no avail. It always replays the same way. The room was dark, and the door was wide open, so I could hear the next call for a drink. I could barely see her face, and both of us had our shirts on just in case an unexpected intruder popped in. My khakis and briefs were pulled down around my skinny knees, and her jean skirt was lifted up over her flat white belly. Her panties were scrunched up in the palm of my hand. It was going to be the first time I had sex. Sex is a delicate subject, and I have a theory as to why. Each of us can speak openly about sex, maybe even attend sex shows with our partners, make sex jokes with our friends, or even brag about sex to anyone who will listen. But the truth is, no one knows what the other couple are actually doing in the bedroom. I have heard men and women tell tales about their sexual skills and claim prowess with their mouths, fingers, or private parts, yet it could all be bullshit. Sex is an activity that can always use critiquing. It's like kissing. With each kiss, you feel something different, even with the same partner. Your mouth, an erogenous zone, with its lips and tongue, are super sensitive and can be stimulated by kissing, soft biting, and licking. Think outside the box, and the options to a wet ecstasy is endless. This is important. Every man and woman should know how to kiss properly. It's like opening a special part of the person you're kissing. Going through foreplay and exploring each other's bodies by kissing and touching will create passion and open the path to discovering. Kissing is your passage to finding your soulmate. I honestly believe that. I think, and I don't mean the first kiss, you kiss someone for the first time and you feel like you're going to be with them for the rest of their life, but there is a lock and key kind of scenario when it comes to kissing where there's a specific person that you kiss and it just makes you feel a certain way. Kissing is your passage to finding your soulmate. I believe that the closest two lovers can get intimately is by passionately kissing. Even prostitutes have rules on kissing because they know that kissing is something special. And with it, a person can really connect heart to heart, see into each other's minds, and feel each other's rhythm. So kissing is not just kissing. It is your open invitation to who you are, what you feel, and what you can give. So learn how to kiss. Here's the final chapter. Before I do the chapter 9, I would like to say, because I don't think this is said often, I like to say that thank you for listening to this book. I put a lot into it. And like I said earlier, the reason why I wrote it was I felt like it covered the majority of the questions that I get on a day-to-day basis from all the people that I've attended class with, people I go to school with, people I work with, people I've met on a day-to-day basis. Yesterday, we went out for dinner at the Franz down at Young in College, the original one. There's two of them. There's one across from Eaton Center, and then there's the one on College Street. And we spoke about Chapter 9 without knowing it. And Chapter 9 is called Keep Your Opinions to Yourself, which is probably one of the hardest things for a person to do. Because when we are sharing our opinions, we're sharing our opinions in hopes of helping a situation. But unfortunately, what the damage that we do is not seen until later. It's safe to say that people's opinions litter the earth like dust in the atmosphere. I personally think that anyone can converse and conduct themselves like an insightful philosopher, and truth be told, that most people do. Give a person a little encouragement and a soapbox, and they will stand tall and release all their opinions onto the crowd. And you can bet, as soon as they speak with a little bit of conviction, someone else will say something about it. People love to stick their nose in other people's business. It's cheap entertainment. Having an opinion is not a problem, and in fact, it's needed for good discourse, and some may argue necessary for progress. But a half-assed opinion leaves a person open to numerous consequences. Don Lemon, a journalist on CNN whose job is to report the news, has had a petition on change.org placed against him because of his opinions. Instead of presenting the facts to the public, as he's trusted to do, he has chosen to speak as an unqualified authority on war, politics, and justice. This may not bother everyone, and I doubt he will face any career-ending repercussions. But imagine if people in trusted positions decided to start going with their own opinions. For example, the bus driver decides that he knows a faster way to finish his route, or your doctor thinks you're tough enough to get over the mumps without medical attention. I think we can agree that things would get out of hand really fast. While you're searching for truth in this world, always remember that fools have a habit of sharing their opinions randomly, and the wise ones listen, observe, and act with a logical mind. There's an old saying that goes, never to talk about religion or politics in polite company. Well, I say, opinions act as blinders. Remove them and you will see that there is more than meets the eye. You deserve the world. There it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kelly, if you forgot. There it is. You deserve the world. 9 life lessons that I wish someone told me sooner. I do not know what you're feeling right now. Maybe you're silently thinking to yourself that you need to start sharpening your common sense, or making a list of spirit vampires that need to exit your life. Whatever it is, you are now closer to your goals. The point to life is not to get everything right, so don't try to. Aim to do the impossible. Stay out of trouble and fill your mind with great books. It will be your way out when you're stuck. Know that you are here for a reason, and your existence is important. And when you do make a promise to yourself, do it without fear. Once again, my name is Kelly, and you just finished listening to 9 life lessons I wish someone told me sooner. My friends, you deserve the world.